Okay. Do you see a red light on there?
I see a red
Okay,
light.
perfect. So, can you just start off by telling me your full name?
Yes, I'm Lee Lange.
Okay. And where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay.
I grew up at first over in Germany
Okay.
for 5 years with my parents. My dad was in the U.S. Army.
Was he part of World War II?
No,
Nope.
but just after World War II,
Okay.
he came in, and so we were over there in the 1948, 49, 50
Okay.
time frame, right after the war. So then we came to California.
Okay, all right.
That's where I was primarily raised.
Okay, so did you go to like elementary school in California?
I
High school in California?
I did.
Did you go to college in California?
I did.
Where did you graduate from?
University of Southern California.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you graduated college. What year did you graduate college?
1970.
And then tell me how you entered the military after that.
Well, the draft was still in effect, and the draft came after me pretty quick after graduating from college, so my deferment was up.
Yep.
So rather than get drafted, I decided to try to go in an officer program,
Okay.
which my college education qualified me for. And I ended up in the Marine Corps.
So did you choose the Marines because you wanted to be in the Marines or because you felt it was the best option for not being drafted?
I went in the Marine Corps because it was an opportunity that presented itself.
Perfect.
The other services actually were drawing down at that time
Okay.
from the war, and we were pulling some of our troops out. So some of them didn't have opportunities that the Marine Corps did.
Okay.
So
that's...
I went with them.
All right. So did you just go straight into OCS because you had graduated college?
I did.
Okay. Perfect. So when did you get out of OCS and when did you actually start? We were second lieutenant, I'm assuming, when you got out?
That's right. So I finished up OCS in April of 1971.
Okay. Where did you go after that?
We went to a follow-on school that the Marine Corps does called the Basic School.
Okay.
So that's a 6-month school after you're commissioned, and it's at Quantico, Virginia, so that's where I went.
Okay. And then so you were there for 6 months?
I was there for 6 months.
And then what did you do after that?
And then I was selected to be in the artillery field, so I went after that to Fort Sill, Oklahoma,
Okay.
for artillery school. Another 3 months.
Another 3 months. So you already knew I was going to ask that. And then what did you do after that?
Then I went to my first assignment.
And what was that?
And that was Hawaii, Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii.
Oh, that's a pretty good first assignment.
1st Marine Brigade.
And so what was, so you trained in artillery. So when you're in Hawaii, is that what you were? I think I read part of your bio and you were you a forward observer?
Yes, I was.
And so how long were you there doing that in Hawaii?
I was started as a forward observer, but I did some other jobs in the battery too.
Okay.
Like fire direction officer and liaison officer. So then I went up to the battalion staff and was the S2
Okay.
for a while, intelligence.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. So I had a lot of jobs.
Yeah, you did. And so when did you leave Hawaii?
In September of 1974.
And what did you do after that?
So I went to Okinawa.
Okay.
And was with the 12th Marine Regiment over there. That's the artillery regiment.
Okay.
3rd Marine Division.
Okay.
And so I was in Fox Battery, 2nd Battalion, 12th Marines.
Okay.
And I was the XO.
So why did they send you to Okinawa? Was it a stepping stone to Vietnam?
Yeah, well, it was, it had to do with the end of my contract with the Marine Corps.
Okay.
At the end of this time in Hawaii, I was due to get out unless I took steps to stay in. So
okay.
I told the Marine Corps that I wanted to stay.
Okay.
And in return, they said, all right, will you accept orders to Okinawa? Well, that's where we want you to go. And I said, yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
And so that's where you went.
That's where I went.
So you were there in September of 74, and then I'm assuming shortly after that, you were in Vietnam. Was that where you went next?
We got there in a roundabout way.
Okay.
Because there are places to train in Okinawa, but not so much, because the Okinawans are not too happy about us shooting artillery live on their island.
Yeah.
So we normally go to Mount Fuji, Japan,
Okay.
where there's a major Japanese training base,
Okay.
which the Americans use.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where you were. Were you going between that and Okinawa?
That's right.
Okay.
So we got on ships and we went to the Mount Fuji training area, which is at the base of Mount Fuji.
Okay.
There's a large training area, so we could shoot there. And that's where we got the call to go to Vietnam.
Okay. So when did you go?
That would have been in early April of 1975.
Okay, so you were in, just so I have my timeline straight, so you were in Okinawa, Mount Fuji from September to April. So were you specifically sent because the US government in April was starting the evacuation processes?
No, we were doing normal exercises, normal rotations, training with a battalion landing team that we were part of.
Okay.
So what you do is you form up into these task forces, these task organized units, battalion landing teams. So we were up there as a whole battalion landing team training. So not expecting necessarily to be in an operation, but that is ultimately why we do those things.
Right, so yeah, so you're ready.
So we were pulled right out of training and sent down to Vietnam as part of Task Force 76.
So in April, was it early April? Do you remember the date?
Early April, I don't know, first part of April, because that's when things started to get really bad in Vietnam, and we saw that it was going to fall.
So that was going to be my next question. So as you were sent to Vietnam in April, what was your feeling, or maybe your battalion's feeling, on how much longer South Vietnam was actually going to stay?
We knew they were going down.
You knew it.
And we knew that we were going to be the force that evacuated everybody.
Okay,
the final evacuation.
So you knew that going in. Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's talk about that then. So you arrived in April. First of all, what was your very first impression of Vietnam when you get there? Did you go straight to Saigon?
No.
Okay.
No. So we were part of a task force, and so we were on ships.
Okay.
Aircraft carriers, destroyers, and an amphibious task force, which was what we were part of.
Okay.
So, it was a large force, but we didn't go ashore. We anchored off of Vietnam, a place called Vung Tau.
Okay, yeah.
So we just set up there, and the idea was that's where we're going to evacuate everybody out to the task force.
Okay, so did you ever leave the ships? Were you always on the ships the entire time?
We were put on alert. We thought we were going to have to go into Vung Tau and provide security there, but that mission never happened.
Okay.
So no, we didn't leave the ship.
All right. So you were always in the water on your ship. So other than, one of my questions was, what was your first impression of Vietnam? But since you actually didn't land, from your point of view, what was your impression?
Well, but we could see, at night, we could see all of the tracers and the firing going on. There was a big firefight going on continuously as the North Vietnamese pressed down, and the South Vietnamese were shooting back. So there was the whole night sky was lit up.
So particularly starting in April 27th is when they started to start shelling Tan Son Nhut Air Base. Was that something you could see from where you were?
No,
you weren't that close.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I may have seen some of the rounds going through the air, but didn't know where they were going.
Okay.
So
kind of in the background.
There was a heck of a firefight going on, though. We could see that.
Well, yeah, I bet that. Okay, so tell me more specifics about your role and your experience just with Operation Frequent Wind. Kind of however you want to talk about it. Like what exactly did you guys do when the evacuation started? Just kind of give me some overview on what you did.
So our role was really to take on board evacuees that were going to be flown out via helicopter from various points in Saigon.
So
primarily the U.S. Embassy for us.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. So were you expecting more Americans or South Vietnamese that had worked for the government?
We knew we were going to get a mix of Americans and Vietnamese that were identified by the U.S. government as having special privileges to get out.
Right. Well, because if they had been identified as working with the government,
they would likely be done away with.
Right. Exactly.
And many were. So there was a huge number.
Okay. And
ultimately more than we could get out.
Yeah.
But so that was it.
So
what we did is working with the Navy, we figured out where are we going to put all these refugees that we're going to take aboard, and we we were on an amphibious ship called the USS Denver.
Okay.
I think it was my ship. So it had a big bay down below where landing craft were stored and where you could embark troops. Anyway, there was a big area down there which if you wanted to, you could make it a temporary place for refugees, and that's what we did.
So if you remember, when did you start accepting refugees?
The 29th of April is my recollection, is when we started doing this. We started getting continuous helicopters landing on our ship with evacuees out of the embassy.
And who was flying the helicopters?
These are Marines.
Marines, okay.
These were Marine helicopter squadrons that were doing it all.
Was there any South Vietnamese pilots, or was it mostly just Americans?
Yeah, they were, that all became part of the drama.
Right.
Because when the evacuation started, then all of the other people in Vietnam and South Vietnamese could see what was happening. So they rushed the embassy, and there was a big issue there with security, but we had Marines from our task force providing security to keep people back, except for the ones that were, authorized to get on the helicopter. So we had thousands of people coming out, but then we started seeing all of the Vietnamese Air Force and private citizens all flying out to the task force in helicopters and fixed wing aircraft, little Cessnas, and they were trying to land on our ships while we were trying to do the evacuation. So it got complicated.
So were they allowed to, or would you have to send them back?
What we did was, in the case of helicopters, on our ship, it didn't have a long enough space for any aircraft to land except for helicopters.
Okay.
So yes, we took them on the space available basis. If we had room, we took them, we got the people out, and then we pushed them over the side.
Okay, I was just going to ask you that because that's a really iconic moment of the evacuation of Saigon. I think it really speaks to the humanity of war too. This idea that we're going to throw millions of dollars of equipment over the ocean so that we can put more people.
We had to.
You have to, and I think that says a lot about just the humanity behind war.
So we were with the Marines and the crew together. We're pushing these helicopters off to clear the landing zone for our own helicopters. And then we had helicopters and other aircraft ditch right outside the task force.
So they would just dump, when you say ditch, can you be more specific?
Yeah, well, ditching would be, you have a helicopter, you can't land on, we wouldn't have let them land, or we didn't have any space, so they had to just set it down in the water. And then when the rotors hit the water, of course, there was a big explosion, and we hoped the people got out, and if they got out, we had boats that we would send out to pick them up. And people were landing, land-based aircraft too. Just bellying them in the water like little Cessna aircraft.
And then just jumping out?
And getting out, and we could see them, but then we picked them up.
So I saw, there was a documentary I watched a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw it. It's called The Last Days in Vietnam. It's on Netflix. PBS did it in 2014. And they have a scene of that where there was a South Vietnamese pilot in a helicopter with his family.
Yes.
And they had to drop the family members out of the aircraft, and one was a baby, and then he did the exact thing. And so you saw that happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we did. And it was a once in a lifetime sight that you would hope you never saw again.
And what was going through your mind as you saw this?
I was going like, wow, this is the end of a country.
Yeah.
We're seeing a country go down, and this is something. This is really something. So all the people that were coming aboard that were, Americans and Vietnamese, I remember they had certainly had fear in their eyes, and they were very happy to be on board our ship. And they were bringing everything that they thought they could carry. And so one of our major jobs was searching all these people and what they were bringing to see that we didn't have contraband. And we were finding weapons, we found gold, we found grenades. So all those contraband items, and I guess we let them keep all their money. But if they had weapons, we were taking them. Ammunition, we took all that stuff.
Did you guys dump that, or you just
we threw it overboard?
Threw it overboard and just add it to the pile.
All went.
Does anyone stand out in your mind? Is there an image of a refugee or someone that was evacuated that kind of sticks with you, or Did you
No.
interact with any of them or anything like that?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't speaking our language, so
Right.
what I was doing was just getting them right off the helicopter and then down below where they were processed by the crew and some of the rest of our people. We had to get them
Okay.
off the deck, down below into the area that we had set up for them, so we could get more people on board.
Right.
We were getting helicopters continuously, so
So you remember them arriving on the 29th, which makes sense with the timeline of the fall of
Yeah.
Saigon. And then, so can you maybe say how long this continued?
yeah, it flew. They ended up flying all night. They were trying to shut down in hours of darkness, but it wasn't possible. We
Right.
didn't have it. We couldn't get enough people out, so they had to get special permission and do special things inside the embassy compound to fly all night. And these are the same pilots that started flying in the day. They're flying way past where they should be flying,
Right,
but they were doing it because there was no choice.
right. And there's no
So-
time.
So they ended up flying all night, and I think it was around 8:30 in the morning on the 30th,
Right.
and the last aircraft got out of the embassy.
Yeah, because, based on the timeline, the North Vietnamese were in Saigon by like 2 in the afternoon, I believe, on April 30th. So, okay, so how many refugees do you think were just on your ship?
I think we had upwards of 5,000 is my recollection on
Okay,
our ship.
just on
So-
your
on our ship, yeah.
USS Denver.
Yeah.
And how many ships were in your task force?
Well, the people that were that we had probably at least half a dozen amphibious ships that were carrying numbers like that.
Okay.
And we were putting them also on the carriers too, and I don't know how many they had, but I saw the number that the number of people we got out altogether, including airlift before
Right, the fixed
we
wing
did
operation.
the final operation was somewhere around 140,000
Right, that's what I've read before.
Vietnamese and Americans that we got out of there. So
So, go ahead.
it was really something. So a helicopter can only fly. We were using our two main helicopters, the CH-46 twin rotor and the CH-53 is our big one. But their capacities, I mean, we were probably flying 50 at a time, which is way past what we should be flying
Right.
normally, but we could do it in an emergency like that. But it takes a while to add up the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, to get the people out, hundreds of flights.
How long from the embassy to your ship do you think it took the helicopter pilots to fly?
I want to say it's probably a 20 or 30 minute flight one way.
One way. So, an hour round trip for these pilots, and
Yeah.
they're just doing this over and over for the entire
And
night.
so we had to. So when they came on board, we had to refuel them. We could do a hot refueling, what they call it, where the engines are still running,
Mm-hmm.
rotors are turning. You put the fuel in, and they keep going. They just kept going.
Just kept going.
So I don't know that we lost any helicopters. It worked out okay. But we got a lot of people out, but we didn't get them all.
No, you didn't, yeah. I mean, just what a momentous historical event to have witnessed.
Yeah.
So-
So the other thing that happened though was that we got all kinds of boats coming out to us too.
So what did you do with those
Because
people?
we were anchors, so they could find us easy enough. Well, we took those boats. I remember seeing at least one fairly large boat alongside our ship, and it was sinking. So we were pulling people out of there and got them all up on our ship, and then the thing was pushed off and it sank shortly thereafter. So yeah, so people in boats we were taking them on by air and from the sea,
However they could get there.
however they could get there.
So even if their boat wasn't sinking, you would take them on and then the boat would just be abandoned
Yes.
in the sea? Okay. So April 30th, 8:30 a.m., you have essentially the last, group that's going to be arriving. What happened after that?
Well, shortly after that, we weighed anchor and steamed down to Subic Bay, the Philippines.
I was going to ask
That
that.
was the major evacuation point for all the people that were that had flown out earlier. There
Right.
was major camps down there.
But wasn't there a problem with the Philippines? Like, didn't they only want to take X amount, and
Yeah.
we just kind of kept bringing them?
Absolutely.
And that's how. Okay,
Yeah, the numbers were overwhelming.
so you're at there. You know, you're at the base in the Philippines, and is that where your role ends? Where you
Yes.
kind of disembark everybody, and then you
We
guys.
put everybody off, and then we were done.
And then who? So just the personnel that was at the base were the ones that then.
Well, they had, they had other forces, and there may have even been some of our own forces, but not my unit,
Okay.
that were there to handle the refugees and take care of them. And then ultimately we got them, we have started a big air bridge to the United States. We were flying them all to the U.S.
Right. Yeah. So how long were most refugees in the Philippines? Do you know?
I don't know, but I'm sure that they were there for, more than a month.
Well, yeah.
Maybe several months.
Yeah, I've read a couple accounts of people that were there for 6 months, some for less, some for longer, because I'm sure that they had to be, like debriefed and, security checks and all of that before you send them. So when your crew, when you guys dropped them off, what did you do after that?
We steamed back up. My recollection is that we steamed back up to Mount Fuji. I'm not certain about that. We probably, we may have done some of our forces up there, but I think, thinking about when I left there, I think we went back to Okinawa.
Okay.
And unloaded all our equipment and tried to get that all squared away, because when we got out of Fuji, we just put it on the first ship we could get it on, because we weren't planning to make an actual combat landing. So we just took everybody. It was about security for the evacuation, so that you didn't have to combat load necessarily. So that's how we put everybody on the ship. So then we had to find all that equipment and get it all off and get it to the right unit. It was a big mess.
Yeah.
And so, we went back and reorganized.
So you were effectively done in Vietnam after that.
Yes.
And then, so let's talk a bit about what your views just on the war were at that time. Like, did you agree with the war? Were you ambivalent? Were you in agreement with it? What did you think about the war at
From
the
where I
time?
was sitting, it was, I didn't have much of an opinion.
Yeah.
Because I was focused much more short term and closer in on what I was doing. All I knew is that I had to make sure that I was ready to go in there if I had to go in there, because it was a shooting war. So we were worried about training to be ready to do something if we had to, not whether or not it was the right thing to do. But sure, we saw all of the opposition to the war, but when you're focused on a mission like that, you don't think about it too much until you are in a situation where you could do that, like after Vietnam.
Right.
And looking back, at the time, I was about, hey, this is what we're being told to do, so we better be ready to do it, because otherwise we can get killed.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was your view after then? After you had time to reflect, over the last 50 years about the America's role in Vietnam, what's your view on that?
Well, I could see it was a war we got into with no idea how to get out,
Yeah.
and something that we have repeated, but
And-
we never learned.
That's my big focus of this project, is to really, show students and just the public this legacy of the Vietnam War is important, because it's very easy to get involved in a foreign war. Very easy.
Sure.
And it's very hard to pull yourself
Yeah,
out of a
of
foreign
course.
war. Especially when you don't know your enemy very well and you don't understand their history. And I think that's a big legacy of the war when we look at, obviously what's going on in the Middle East isn't exactly the same, but there's some echoes, getting
but-
involved in the foreign war.
But what happened in the Vietnam War was, that was a great wrong, was the way that the American military was treated coming out of Vietnam, when they had nothing to do with it,
Right.
except they were doing what they were told to do.
Yeah, and so that they don't get killed.
So somehow, the way it got turned around was it was like our fault. Vietnam was our fault. But no, And
It
so,
wasn't.
And so we really did a disservice to all those people that served, and so now, 50 years later, there's a movement to rectify that. So
Yeah.
now we're welcoming them back home. Okay,
Yeah.
50 years late. Well, it's unfortunate that it happened the way it happened.
Did you personally experience any animosity when you came home?
No, I can't recall ever having done that, but it was low key. I remember, I don't remember even, guidance on not wearing uniforms or whatnot. I don't think I did anything extraordinary, but when I was allowed to travel in civilian clothes, I did.
Right.
So I don't remember it being a problem.
So after Vietnam, you stayed in the military for quite a long time.
I did.
You made a career out of it.
I did.
So what did you do after Vietnam?
I was assigned to the 1st Marine Division at Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
And while I wasn't personally involved, we had people involved in taking care of refugees. We had huge camps, refugee camps there for some time.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And we had to send people from our unit.
Okay, over
but
there.
I was never involved personally, but they were there for quite some time before we got them relocated.
And how long were you in Pendleton after the war?
I was there for 3 years.
And then what did you do after that?
I went back to Fort Sill,
Okay.
Oklahoma, for the Advanced Artillery School, and then I went to Washington State to work with a Marine Corps Reserve unit
Okay.
in Spokane, Washington.
And then what did you do after that?
Then I went back to Camp Pendleton.
What year was that?
That was 1978.
Okay.
So then I went back to some of the same, at the battalion level, some of the same units that, well, no, it wasn't the same. This was the 11th Marines that I
Okay.
was with. So I was back in an artillery battalion doing some of the same jobs that I'd done before, but then I moved up because I was a captain.
Mm-hmm.
When I first coming out of Okinawa, ended up being a captain at Pendleton, and I came back the second time I was a major.
Oh, good.
So I ended up being an XO of a battalion,
Okay.
and then I went to Command and Staff College that the Marine Corps runs in Quantico,
Okay.
and then I went to Korea for 2 years.
I knew you went to Korea, yeah.
So that was a joint assignment,
What years were you in Korea?
1985-87.
Okay.
Then I went to Headquarters Marine Corps for 3 years. Then I was working in the Manpower Department as a planner,
Okay.
what we call a planner. So that was until 90, and then I went to the 2nd Marine Division and was involved in the Gulf War.
I was going to ask you that. So what did you do you were part of Operation Desert Storm, correct?
I was.
And so what did you do for that?
So I was I was at the battalion or division staff level as a weapons employment officer. So I was worried about any issues related to nuclear and chemical, biological weapons.
Right.
And of course we had that threat in Iraq and what they were going to do, we thought they were going to do. So I got some training in that, and I was doing that job over in the Gulf War.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fortunately, they didn't come after us with those weapons,
Right.
but there was some exposure, some low-level exposure to some of the residue from some of the things they were doing. So we had some scares, but we never had a big problem.
So how long, because Operation Desert Storm wasn't a super long operation.
No,
How
it was
long were
quick.
you? How long
So
were you
I was
there?
over there only 4 months,
Oh, okay, and then you came back.
and I came back.
And then what did you do?
Then after that, I moved again to Headquarters Marine Corps
Okay.
for another 3 years, so 93 to 96, 97, actually it was a little more than 3 years. Then I went back to Camp Lejeune, the 2nd Marine Division again, and I was a commander at that tour from 97 to 99. And then I went one final time to Headquarters Marine Corps,
Yeah.
and retired in 2001.
Oh, so okay. So after you retired, I saw you were active in the MOAA organization.
Yes, so I was hired in the government relations team for the Military Officers Association of America. Ended up being a lobbyist
Yeah.
for military benefits,
Great.
and I worked primarily on survivor benefits.
Okay.
So widows of members killed on active duty or who died from service-connected causes or for any reason. So there's a bunch of benefits that they were entitled to, and we have some laws that really weren't fair to them, and that's what I was working on.
Oh, great. And do you do any of that currently, or are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that I spent 12 years with MOAA, and now there's a chapter system nationwide, and we have chapters here in Arizona, 9, and I am in one of those chapters.
And you're the president of one.
I was a president of the Arizona chapter,
Nice.
MOAA, but now I am a past president. I'm the immediate past president.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff related to legislation too, because we still support federal and state legislation for veterans.
So all together, Vietnam, Desert Storm, just being in the military as a career military member, how do you feel that's impacted you as a person?
I think it was a very important thing to do.
Yeah.
And I had a great time doing it. So it was dangerous at times, but I was very happy doing it. So
Good.
that's why going in, I had no intention of staying because the draft essentially chased me in.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. So when I got into it, though, I could see it was important and I liked what I was doing, and so I stayed for 30, which was as long as I could stay at my rank.
And
So-
what was your final rank?
Colonel.
Colonel. Isn't that funny how life works that way?
Yes.
Where just, I'm going to go in here because of the draft, and then you end up making a career out of it.
Yeah. So I thought it was important, but at the time, it was when they told me it was time to go, I was fine with that too.
Yeah.
And then working for MOAA was the next most important thing I'd done,
Yeah.
because what's interesting is you have a perspective, one perspective when you're in the military, which is all of the things the military does, all the laws, all the benefits are fair and impartial, and we're taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you leave, you find out a different story. It's a different story.
Oh, yeah, I believe that.
Because quite honestly, I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's not about being bad people, but
Right.
the policies are when you leave, you're forgotten in about 10 minutes. You're gone, your history, and we don't want to really have anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, we're not too happy that you're costing us money because you're retired, but you're not contributing anything anymore. That's the attitude. And it's not
That's not fair.
anybody's fault.
No.
It is what it is.
It is, but it's still not fair to the people
Yeah,
that.
so that's why I thought it was so important to be working for a group like MOAA, which always, it goes to Congress and reminds people, hey, remember now, this was a contract that we all signed when we set up to serve, that we would serve and then you would do certain things after we served, but now you want to go back and revisit those and say that they're too much, or we should maybe take some of those back. Well, that's not fair. So that's why we exist, and we were able to, had some great success reminding Congress, because when they see those kinds of things, they have to agree. Let's do what's fair. We
Yeah.
promised you certain things, we have to do it.
Yeah, you do.
So.
All right,
yeah.
so in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that faces Vietnam veterans today?
Well,
As a whole, generally speaking.
well, some of it has to do with health concerns.
Right.
And all of the things that happen to members who served over there, like Agent Orange, and all those conditions associated with that, we really have to get that squared away. We still have unanswered questions with those kinds of illnesses, not all being covered by the VA. So they have that, and then it's about reaching out to all those Vietnam veterans to make sure that they now know that they're welcome, that while we didn't welcome you then, we're welcoming you now. We're sorry we didn't do it before, but we want to do it now, so join us.
Yeah.
Accept it.
I think that's one of the biggest successes, at least from a lesson we've learned from Vietnam, is, when we look at soldiers today coming back from the Middle East, like you said earlier, we don't blame them. I think that we didn't learn from that experience. I think there's more we could have learned from the Vietnam War as a society, but at least we have that. Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
In your opinion, again, what is the biggest legacy of the Vietnam War on American society?
Well, I think it is the civilian leadership getting into a conflict where they lose the support of the public. So they have to think that through before they get into one, especially one that runs many, many years. So we have a similar issue with the war on terror, except that we've been able to manage that. It wasn't such a huge conflict where so many people are getting killed,
Right.
injured, but it's the same kind of thing. A long-term conflict with no exit strategy is the lesson we should be learning, but we haven't yet.
Because we still don't have
The
it.
civilian leadership, unfortunately, and you know, when you're in the military, you see it and you know how it's going to turn out, but you're not the guy that's calling the shots. You think you can, and of course there's other issues working, we know that. But we always wonder, how do we get ourselves in these things? And then you want us, the military, to clean these things up. You have no exit strategy, we're going to be there forever.
Yeah.
We're not particularly happy with strategies like that. We're going to do it because that's what we do, but
Right.
you could do this better
Right.
if you thought it through and you weren't so fixed on what I see so much of is, okay, those people that went before us, they didn't know how to do this, they weren't smart enough, but I have the answers, I know how to do this, I'm going to do this. And they do the same things that their predecessors do, get us into a conflict that has no exit strategy.
Well, I
And
think.
then they try to talk their way out of it.
Yeah.
That makes us a bit angry.
Yeah.
Those of us who are in the military and or have been in the military, we can see this pretty clearly. We don't know why other people can't, but it is what it is. So that's the big lesson that I hope we would learn, that I hope civilian leadership would learn.
Do you think that a lot of the issues when you look at Vietnam and current conflicts today in the Middle East, the war on terror, have a lot to do with how military technology and just how warfare's changed in the post-World War II world? Because when you look at Vietnam, you look at the war on terror, there's not necessarily decisive battles anymore. Like there wasn't a battle of Berlin that ends the war.
Right.
I think that is something to consider when you look at, why it's so difficult for us to get out of these foreign wars, because you don't have that type of, late 19th century, early 20th century mind frame of, we're going to make our way to the capital, and then when we take the capital, it's done.
Well, yeah. That's because we're now involved in wars that actually aren't winnable.
Right, and there's no
We
borders
can't
really.
win. It's not like it used to be, that's
No.
right. World wars, not like world wars. So, these are the conflicts that we haven't figured out how to deal with.
Right.
And we're still trying to do things that we did in the past. So you have to think about, what is the cause of these conflicts? Why are people unhappy?
Yeah.
And try to fix that, but we don't do that.
No.
It's a huge problem.
It is.
I admit that.
Oh, I know, and that's, as a military historian, I clearly see this, and that's something I, inspired this project is, let's, make it more obvious to people what some of these legacies are and what we can do as a society, to change that.
You know what this reminds me of? I know you know this. Like the war on terror reminds me of, for people who study military or history at all, reminds me of the Crusades. So for thousands of years we've been doing this kind of thing in a little bit different ways. It was religiously driven for the Crusades, but it was a conflict they fought for hundreds of years and didn't win. Nobody won.
No.
And here we are.
Yeah. We still have those legacies.
We have unhappy people now
Yeah.
who are lashing out at others who maybe have more than they do.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard. I think education's the first step. So,
Sure.
yeah.
And the military's in the middle,
Yeah.
because we do what we're told to do in the nation's policy. So yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's very valuable for people to hear it from somebody that was there and has a different point of view than reading it from a textbook. So, is there anything else you'd like to add to the camera before you go?
I thank you for coming today. If this helps you in somehow,
Oh, it does.
it's great.
All right. Well, thank you, Lee.